Morning. Today we're going to be looking at 2-5, which is finding distances on a coordinate plane. So the last couple of days we've talked about coordinate planes and how we're able to find our ordered pair using our x and our y axis to find different spots on that coordinate plane. Yesterday we added a little bit more and we added in our rational numbers, so we had some fractions and decimals. Today we're going back to our whole numbers. So we're going to be looking at integers, so we'll have positive and a negative. But here we're taking a look at doing some adding and subtracting and doing some counting to find distances between points on a coordinate plane. Now, when we're doing this assignment, first off, you guys, there's going to be a lot of real world application. We're actually doing some thinking, if this is in this location and it needs to be this far away from another place, what is it going to be? And you'll see that on the assignment today. Your assignment today is going to be an online one. There's only 4 questions, but it really involves some extra thinking with some real world application. We're using our information about absolute values to help solve this. Remember, absolute value is how far away we are from 0. So if it's a positive 2, our absolute value is 2. Same thing, if it's a negative 2, our absolute value is also 2. So it's how far away we are from 0. So we're going to start with an example on a grid here. So here we have our coordinate plane. Now the grid is nice because it really shows us a great visual of how to solve these problems. So we're going to start with our blue example here. On our blue example, I found 2 different points. Here I have 3, 3, and I have 3, 7. If we're trying to figure out the distance between these points, we could think pretty visual here. And we could think, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 spots between those places. Not too bad, right? Or we could also take a look at the numbers that they give us here. Here we know 3 is the same, so we're going to take a look at the 2 that are going to be different. We have a positive 7 and a positive 3. Because they're both positive, we are going to subtract those numbers and we get an answer of 4. So here, hold on one second, sorry guys. Here, there are 4 units, and you guys, sometimes they'll tell you the units, sometimes it's just going to be the number, but there are 4 units between our 3, 7 and our 3, 3. So we could do that through math, or we could simply take a look at the spots there. Let's take a look at our red example here. I went over 11, didn't go anywhere. I stayed at 0. And then I went over 11 and then down 6 for my second one. So to figure out the distance between these 2 spots, I could count my spots, my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. Or I could take a look at my math here. I could look at my examples. 11's the same. Here we can take a look at our 0 and our negative 6. For this, we want to find our absolute value. Our absolute value for 0 is 0, and our absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So to find the difference between these 2 places, we're going to take 6 minus 0, which is going to be 6 units. Our next example is when we have a positive and negative number. So here we go negative 6 up 4, so positive 4. Our second one, negative 6, negative 5. Now it's a little bit different when we go across an axis. Notice here, they're both in quadrant 1. This one, they're technically both in quadrant 4. Here we have 1 in quadrant 2 and 1 in quadrant 3. So it goes a little bit different when we cross over that x or y axis. For this example, look at our 6's are the same, okay? So we could just count our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We could just simply count those spots. However, you guys, it's not always going to be on a grid, so we need to know how to do it with math as well. Our absolute value of 4 is 4. Our absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Now, you guys, when we're going from one quadrant to another quadrant, we need to do addition instead of subtraction. A way to help us remember is that we need to get to 0, and then we need to extend down to our next part. So here we're doing 4 plus 5 to figure out our distance. So we have a total of 9 units for the green one. Now, very similar to this one here, we're going from quadrant 3 to quadrant 4, but now we're going over that y-axis instead. So here I have 3, -10, and then I have -2, -10. So I could think about my absolute values. It takes me 3 to get to 0, and then let's add another 2 to get over to this side, to our -2. So it is 5 units. We could also think, just as some addition here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or there are 5 boxes in between those two places. There'll be a couple that just give us the problems. Here we do not have the grid. When we're looking at this, we want to think, what do we have in common? So that our 8 is going to be the same, but here we have a -2 and a 7, a +7. So we need to think about our absolute values here. We have different quadrants here because we have a negative and a positive. When we have, different signs, so our negative and a positive, we need to add those. So we have the absolute value is 2, the absolute value is 7. We're going to add those ones together. And here, our units between are going to be 9 units. On this one, notice our -5s are the same, so we're going to be looking at our other ones. We have a -3 and a -6. Notice, you guys, we have negatives and negatives. That means they're in the same quadrant. When they're in the same quadrant, we are going to subtract. Subtract. We need to find our absolute value of each one. Absolute value of -3 is 3. Absolute value of -6 is 6. So what we're going to do, we are going to do 6 minus 3. So here, there are 3 units. So when you do not have the example of the grid to actually count those, we need to think, for same, you're going to find the absolute value and subtract. For different signs, you're going to find the absolute value and then add. Today's assignment is going to be looking at real-world application. When we talk about real-world application, you are going to have a lovely grid that looks just like this. Sorry, you guys, got a little tickle in my throat. Here I have a lovely house. I have a park, maybe a hill. I don't know. That's a lake. Okay. What they're going to be asking you is to find different locations based on the distance from things. Now, on your assignment, each spot, so each one of these spots right here is going to be equaling 1 mile. So you're going to have to do some thinking. Now, if something is here, we know that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places from the park. Okay, so we can move up and down or side to side, and every time we move over one, it's going to count as 1 mile. Your assignment, it's only 4 problems, but it really makes you think, because you need to find locations of places and find that coordinate based on the distance from 3 different places. So it may ask you, we're going to say Graydon, where's Graydon's home? And it might say it is, this many, like it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from Wyatt's house, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from the park, and then how many from the lake. So you're going to have to really think about where those ones fit. Now, my recommendation for this, it's going to start by telling you, Graydon's house is 5 miles from Wyatt's house. If that's the case, we're going to start with our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that it has to be somewhere around that area. So I would recommend starting with the first number and finding, this would be your area that it's going to be. Now, our second one, what is the area that it would be from there? And the third one, where would it be from there? And then it's going to be having that overlapping point. Like I said, this is great because this is some real world application as you're going through this example. There are 4 problems. These ones are online. And Emlyn, I know you're watching this one too. I know your assignment is looking a little bit different for this. When you're looking at the first part of your assignment, it is going to be focusing more on this right here. So finding that absolute value, so you might see those lines there to find those absolute value to figure out how many units are in between. If you have questions, please make sure you ask. Thank you.